Hey, good morning,
Hey.
everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Really excited for today's episode of the Child Care Bridge. I've got my special guest today, Julia, and I'm going to introduce her in just a second. And we're going to have kind of just a casual conversation. So, Julia is the director of a faith-based center in California. And we had a conversation a little bit before this, and I was really excited to hear that they have fared quite well. And obviously, the story has kind of varied from center to center in terms of how things are going, whether you're in California, New York, Detroit, Florida. I mean, it is varying, not even just state by state, but center by center. So I want to just kind of have her talk about kind of what's been working, what she's seeing, and we're going to do some brainstorming live and see if there's some other ways that we can just throw some off-the-cuff ideas to help her continue to drive enrollments. So Julia, thank you ever so much for being here, especially earlier on the West Coast. So if you need to take some coffee or whatnot, please feel free. We're pretty casual here. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how you got into childcare to start with.
Well, I have been in the field of early education for 30 years now. I've been at my current school for 26 years and started off teaching and then moved into the administrative role. And it's been great. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what we do here, and that I get to be a part of these little ones' lives, their early education experience, and part of the lives of these families. Especially right now, they're so stressed. Life is stressful, but especially current circumstances, And so just being able to come alongside of them and support them and be here for them. I know I've heard even on, the group page, a lot of people a lot of teachers are nervous about going back into the classroom live and, question, hey, are we not valued as much as elementary school teachers? And I would say we've never been more valued. Parents really know now just how valuable we are to their family. So it's been really encouraging. It's neat to be a part of that.
No, that's a great story. Tell me a little bit about the center that you're working at. I didn't want to butcher the name. I feel like I was going to mispronounce the name. So I'm like, I'll let her tackle that.
You'd be in good company.
So tell us the name of the center, where you're located in California. And I know you've got a unique center where, again, you're not only faith-based, but you're also tackling all the different ages. So tell us a little bit more about the center.
So I am at our preschool campus. It's Grace Brethren Schools. We're in Simi Valley, California. It's just outside of LA County. And we are a ministry of a local church. And we have campuses that serve students from 2 years old in preschool all the way up through 12th grade. So we're part of a larger school system. Currently, our kindergarten through 6th grade campus and our junior senior high campus are doing remote learning, but the preschool has been open since March 30th. We reopened back in the spring and have been doing pretty good since.
So tell me, I know you mentioned you guys only closed for like 2 weeks. So what made you close for the 2 weeks, and then why did you reopen? I don't even want to say that swiftly, because obviously everything has been a preference based on the center, the owners, and other regulations. But what made you guys kind of close down and then also reopen back up 2 weeks later?
Well, I think when we were discussing as an administrative team for the whole school, we were talking about closing down for the 2 weeks. All the schools in the area were doing the same thing. All the local preschools shut down. Everybody just shut down for 2 weeks. We thought it was only going to be 2 weeks for everybody. We really didn't know what was happening, and we made the decision at that point that if we were closing our kindergarten through 12th grade campuses, which was consistent with what the local public schools were doing, then we also needed to close down the preschool for the very same reason. But as we got into those couple of weeks, we got through that first week of nobody knowing what was going on. Just there was a lot of unknowns, and that was a little bit of a stressful time. But as more and more information came out about, essential jobs could be open and what was essential and what wasn't, childcare was clearly made to be known, in California at least, to be essential. And so I called my local licensing agency and I said, hey, what can and should I be doing right now? We're closed, but what do we do? And it was really kind of funny. They were really supportive, and they emphasized to me very clearly, very repeatedly, how essential childcare was and what a need there was just in the community. And so with that information and just all the public health information, my head of school and we had some real serious conversations about should we, could we, how do we do this? And we just kind of navigated it step by step. When we reopened after the 2 weeks, we had about 5 students. We didn't open big, we started with one group of students, and we didn't have enough students to support what we were paying staff to be here. But we chose to continue on at that time, even though we were losing money, to continue on because it was just a service to our families. The families that were here, they needed it. So that was why we moved as swiftly as we did.
I like it. Do you think that your internet just cut out slightly for a second, but I think it's kind of stabilized. The audio is good. I don't think the video is matching your words perfectly, but I can hear everything that you're saying. So it's the audio that perfectly counts anyways. But so when I was looking at kind of the different centers that I think have fared the best, I think that faith-based centers, from what I have seen, have actually fared the best. And do you think that has to do with kind of the parents' trust in the center, the church? Any thoughts there? Or do you think it quite frankly could also be a little bit of a coincidence? But from the numbers that I have seen with all the centers that we work with and kind of analyzed, yes, it definitely, if there was a center that was in New York City, for example, they were, closed and decimated. So even if they were faith-based, at the peak of COVID, it really didn't matter where they were based. Or let me revise that statement. It didn't matter that they weren't faith-based or Montessori, or they were trying to it was like, hey, you better figure something out. But if I look across the U.S. at some of the centers that we've worked with, I think the faith-based centers fared pretty well. And I know you mentioned when we were talking previously that kind of the parents kind of had trust. And what were you hearing from the parents on kind of reopening back up and kind of some things over the last couple of weeks?
At first, parents were nervous, but they were also very grateful. And I think one thing that played a big role in parents bringing back their students, maybe sooner than other places, I don't know, is the relationship that we have with families. Not to say that other people don't have relationship, but I kept hearing, even parents who said, we're not ready to come back yet. They said, but we trust you, we love you, we know you guys are doing everything great. We're just not ready yet. Great. So there's been a lot of really good conversations. But a lot of parents, I think we had a good track record prior to everything happening. We had a good track record of trust and always trying to do the best that we can and do right by their child and by them. And so in the last 5 months, there's been so many changes. It's like, okay, this week, this is the protocol. Oh, tomorrow it's different. And the parents have been so good and so gracious, and they've rolled with everything, and they understand we're working together as a team to figure this all out. And that's been really neat. to, have that partnership with them.
Did you do anything with those couple of weeks that you guys were closed? Did you do any stuff on Zoom, or how were you communicating with the families to keep them engaged? Because I think that I would say, and I would be making up a statistic at this point, but I mean, probably 30%, maybe, I don't know, probably 20% of the centers that we were working with closed at least for a short time, some longer than others. But I think when I have seen the centers that have rebounded the quickest, it's either A, the centers that were closed the shortest, or B, if they were closed for a month or 2 or 3, they had active communication, active lesson plans. They weren't just doing kind of a 5-minute Zoom meeting once a week, but they were really actively engaging with the family. So what did you guys do during those couple of weeks when you were closed?
We cleaned. We cleaned from top to bottom. In regards to the families, we didn't do Zoom during those 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think my sense of it was, and I know other schools who did in our area who really were successful with Zoom teaching. So yeah, I would agree that those schools who are just now reopening that did a lot of stuff on Zoom, they're gonna be okay because they did engage their students. In those 2 weeks, I think everyone was just overwhelmed in the very beginning. Once we came back on campus, I did attempt to do some Zoom group, and I found that they weren't really showing up, not in any significant manner. And a lot of our families have multiple children, so they were homeschooling their older students and trying to work from home, and getting on Zoom with me with their little one, I think just wasn't the priority at that moment. I think it was just more than they could do. And that's okay, because I figure it's my job to meet the need, and if it wasn't the need in that moment, then that's okay. But we did do some Zoom, but it wasn't a big hit here. So
we're getting a couple of questions here. So I want to move to kind of present day. So the great news that you shared with me is that you guys are thriving. You mentioned that you're pretty much at the capacity that you guys want and are licensed to have based on present circumstances. So did you do any other marketing? What did you do to, get everything refold? Did all the parents just come back and it was basically no one really went away? Did you have to do some new marketing? What did you do to get to where you are as of today?
Well, our marketing to begin with, in normal times, a lot of it is word of mouth. The other big thing with us for marketing has been Facebook. The local, moms groups on Facebook, those have been where I am for a couple years now. That's where I get my biggest inquiries. So we continued, we timed it sensitively, of course, but then we did start marketing that we were reopening for essential workers and that we were still enrolling for fall. I have approximately 15 families right now who, when we did pre-enrollment before COVID, when they pre-registered for right now back in February, I have about 15 of those families who at as we got closer to school starting last week, they were just like, we're not ready. Either they're still homeschooling an older sibling or they're not ready. So not everybody came back. But we have gotten an influx of new students as well. While all the other schools were closed in town, we did get a couple of students who had nowhere else to go, and they've decided to stay with us.
And is that kind of so you mentioned you're now kind of getting an influx. And then it's funny that you should say word of mouth. So usually when I ask centers what's the number one source of marketing or how they're generating enrollments is word of mouth, which is fine. Why do you think those other? So obviously you mentioned they didn't have a place to go, but is there something else? Was it all word of mouth that they were just really happy with kind of how you guys were communicating, the fact that you closed for just 2 weeks and you kind of turned it pretty quickly? What do you think that reason is?
Well, our school has been here in the community for a very long time, since 1978. And so it has a reputation in the community. And yeah, people were talking about it on Facebook, and every time somebody walks in for a tour, I'm like, how did you hear about us? Inevitably, they know somebody, or they met somebody at the park. So it's been real interesting. So we do have a marketing department that does some things, but the biggest for our center here has been between people knowing each other or just talking about it at the park, and then posting on the moms groups. Somebody will say, hey, I'm looking for a preschool, and everybody chimes in. And so
are you guys on that particular group, or like posting actively as well? Or are you kind of like staying in the background and letting your parents talk? Because this is an interesting one where I've talked a lot about it, where there's a lot of centers that will train them on how to kind of actively take part, where you make friends with the owner basically of the Facebook group. So what part of, I know you're in California, what part of California, what are you guys based in?
We're Southern California. We're in Ventura County, which is just outside of Los Angeles County.
Ah, okay. How far are you near Newport Beach at all, that area, or is that still a little bit
we're about an hour south of Santa Barbara.
Got it. Okay, perfect. I used to go to Newport Beach often, like one of my favorite cities in the U.S. that like doesn't seem real, but I think I could maybe afford like a garage there if I wanted to move out there. All right, so it's awesome to hear that you guys are thriving, and it really sounds like it really has came down a lot to just the communication. And if your center was sitting on the sidelines and not communicating, that it probably would have been a little bit of a different story for you guys, that people might have been a little bit more timid to return. So we've got let's talk about two completely different topics. One topic I know was kind of how do you return to how you were doing things 6 months ago? And you mentioned that you guys used to do chapel, for example, kid-friendly chapel. So let's talk a little bit about that, and I'll share some ideas, and you can kind of share what you guys have been doing. And then we'll kind of end with talking a little bit about some strategies to drive you some more pre-K enrollment. So let's start with, tell me some of the things that you guys have either completely modified or that you guys have kind of paused that you kind of want to talk through.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out, how do we keep some of the activities that we love to do, like we used to do and are still figuring out how to do, like on-site field trips. We bring the field trip to us. Chapel. But we've like had to modify our playground time so that groups aren't mixing. So there's so many logistical things that are different. And so trying to navigate through, how do we go back to some of those things that we used to do? We used to have co-curricular activities such as a dance class or a soccer class in the afternoons. And right now those are on pause because we can't mix the groups of children. Similar thing with chapel that we would do, we would have four classes, we have 8 classes. We would have 4 classes at a time in a room together, singing, having fun, doing chapel. And we just haven't figured out, and we would give awards to students, and we'd invite parents to come see their child get an award, and now we can't do that. And we're trying to figure out, how do we do that? under the current guidelines? How do we get close to that?
So I'll share with you the good news and the bad news from what we're hearing and seeing. So we as an agency, we help drive enrollment and manage websites and social media. So we're usually not in the kind of the operational side of centers, but obviously in working with so many centers, we're not just hearing about enrollment, but we're hearing about how do we do our graduation this year that we've been doing for 20 years, for example. So it's a good news, bad news. So to me, the bad news is that from everything that we're hearing from the centers, that there really isn't an easy way to go back to normal. And I hate the phrase the new normal, but that is where things are today. That things are having to really be most likely permanently modified over the next year. So some of the faith-based centers that we work with, they have shifted to bringing some of the more of their stuff outside, where instead of doing a little chapel, for example, in the building, that they're going outside. Since you're in California, if you're in kind of a warmer climate, for example, they're trying to make more use of the outdoor space. Obviously, if you're a little bit more confined with like a small playground, and if you don't have enough space, that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But they found that when the kids are a little bit more outside, that it's a more relaxed setting. They are able to socially distance a little bit more effectively. But the challenging news is that I personally have not heard of a way to just kind of flip the switch of, okay, we can kind of go back to normal. A lot of centers like yours are adding on virtual, and I think that could be an interesting option for you guys. So, and what I mean by that is the simplest of forms is to have a Zoom, but what they're doing is they are saying, okay, great. So we're going to have our normal day. And again, the normal day is this whole new normal, so to speak. But then what they're doing is they are then inviting the kids and the families to something like a little mini service, or to simulate chapel where someone, whether it's yourself or a teacher or whomever is kind of leading that, they are on something like Zoom or Google Classroom or a private Facebook Live group, and they're allowing all the different families then to attend, where it's obviously, it's not the experience that the kids used to have, but at least it's giving them something where they can kind of experience it from home. So that has been the best option that we have been seeing, is all the things that are close to impossible to replicate with the current guidelines. We've said, how can we replicate it online and then be able to kind of be in their living rooms, for example. So we've got centers where, the owners are doing, it's not just like a weekly story time, but they're also then giving some supplemental activities. One of the owners gives out kind of a fun like recipe, for example, where they're like, oh, here's my recipe for the week that I want you guys to make at home, where it just, you're having to think outside the box a little bit of what the heck can we do at these present times. But unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you that all the centers have simply had to kind of adopt. But it's with the way that virtual and hybrid has become so quickly mainstream, we're finding that the children and even the parents and families, they're adopting it much quicker. They're liking it a bit more than they probably would have maybe a year or two ago. And there's a lot of options there. And there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with Zoom. But the thing that I think could be really interesting for you guys also is if there were the secret sauce that we found. So I always like to, it's like my favorite marketing word lately. I'm like, the secret sauce is if you're able to combine offline with online. And what I think could work really well is maybe if there is a particular book that you want the children to read, so you're actually sending them home with something, or if there's some families that just don't feel comfortable returning, at least right now, where you're staying engaged, but you're giving them something to put in their hands. And then you're getting them on a call to kind of discuss the book or read the book again, or what did the book mean, and kind of talk through it. So it's finding how can you at least still put something in their hands, because it just isn't like talking like this just isn't going to magically, it's not going to magically replace everything that you guys have been doing.
Not with a 3-year-old.
Definitely not with a 3-year-old.
Doesn't, right.
So that unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer, but I would encourage you to look at how could you up your game on the digital side. And my other piece, why I'm suggesting this to everyone largely, is to hedge their bets. So I really hope that COVID does not return, and then we get into all the insanity that we had in March. But if you wanted to, I guess, prepare for the worst, expect the best, hope for the best, you would be able to have kind of a little bit more of a rhythm of doing some online stuff. Or if you had to change that switch, okay, great, we're going to have to go to online for a few weeks, that at least it was a little bit kind of ingrained in them, where there was an activity, there was a book, there was some structure. You were doing chapel virtually, and it doesn't have to be always structured during the 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, for example. A lot of these centers they're doing something small, the faith-based ones, on a Sunday afternoon, for example. So there's a lot of options. I want you to kind of think outside the box.
Yeah. There is no box these days, I have found. There's no box left. It's gone.
I think
everything has to be outside the box.
That's a great quote. I think that's going to be, I'm going to throw that one up on one of our banners here. That one, I think, is going to be the quote of the day. So there is no box.
There is no box.
Everything is outside the box. I love it. So that'll be our little guy here. Add. Okay. Yeah. So that is the quote of the day. There's no box. Everything is outside the box. I like that a lot. So let's talk about enrollment. So I know you mentioned that kind of pre-K, and that's really what you're looking for. So you mentioned kind of word of mouth. You mentioned Facebook. Tell me a little bit more about kind of what you're doing with Facebook.
We have we've had over the years, we've had a couple different, marketing materials that from time to time I will post, in the moms group or even the local community groups, just promoting the preschool. We do that also with our elementary and junior senior high as well. Not wanting to overdo it, but find that balanced rhythm of keeping it in front of them, so that those who are looking, it's something they'll notice. You asked earlier if I am a part of those groups. I'm not as the school, but as me. Like, I am a mom, so I am part of the moms group. And when somebody talks about a preschool, a lot of times the parents, our current parents or former parents, will mention us or tag me in it, and I'll respond. I try to find that right balance of not being all over it, but just a presence. So that's kind of what we've been doing.
So I just was reading some of the stuff that you had on Facebook. So a few rapid fire ideas at you. So the first one, and I don't know, so you guys is the center owned by the church? Is that how the relationship works?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have are they allowing you to actively use the email list of the parishioners or not? Or is that kind of a gray area?
That's a gray area. That's a good question.
So I'll give you two ideas. So the first idea, if you're allowed to leverage the email list, I would encourage you to set up something with Aweber, iContact, MailChimp, one of those inexpensive tools. A lot of them give you a free account until you hit a certain threshold, and do kind of a non-salesy email. Hey, we're part of the church. We're owned by the church. So you supporting our center only helps the community. So you want the church, the community, this family. If you want to learn more, do X, or on that email, click here to download X. So maybe download the 7 secrets to raising kids during uncertain times, or so you want to put together a little guide that reflects your brand, so that the first email is kind of non-salesy, but it then very quickly starts to, obviously, if it's going out to someone who's maybe in their 80s at the church, I mean, that might not be the best person to receive it. So if you make it really salesy, it's going to probably be tough to get approved, and then B, it's going to not resonate as well. So if you make it kind of non-salesy, that's always a great tactic. So that's one idea. But the other thing that you can do is you can actually leverage that email list, not email them, and you could actually run ads to those people right on Facebook by uploading the names, and you could actually run some pretty inexpensive ads. So maybe $10 a day, but what you're doing is you're running an ad to people that are on that list. So what Facebook does is it scans the list, and it sees how many of those people actually match the list that you have. So let's say you've got a list of, 500 names. It's going to say, okay, great, 100 of these families match, and you can run ads for pennies on the dollar with a list that's small to those people. And then what you can do is you can click another button and say, hey, Facebook, not only do I want to run ads to these people, I want to run ads that look 99% similar to these people. It's called a Facebook lookalike. And that's really where things start to take off, is that what Facebook does is it leverages all that data. It'll say, okay, great. So these are all the things that these people have in common. And then it's going to show your ads to people that look identical to those parishioners, if those are the people that you want to attract. You can also do the same thing with your current enrollments, is take that list of 50, 100, whatever, all your past enrollments, and load it up there and say, Facebook, find me more people that look like these people. And they need to be in this zip code. They need to be associated with any church. So you put some different criteria, but it allows you to get your message in front of the right people rapidly. And that is kind of what I just had a strategy call this morning with the center. And I'm like, we need to get you running like this afternoon, tomorrow, because time is of the essence for a lot of centers. That this is not all centers are doing as well as you guys are. And so happy to hear that you guys are thriving and doing everything you can in these challenging times. But those would be that to me would be the 2 low-hanging fruit, is email blast to the list, and then leveraging any list that you have to start to do some interesting stuff with Facebook ads. So not free Facebook, but paying traffic. And what I like about the paid traffic is that, well, I know word of mouth is very, very powerful. It literally is always the answer. Every time I ask a center, what's the number one source of leads or enrollments? Word of mouth. But the thing that you cannot control is word of mouth. You don't know if you're going to get 10 enrollments, if you're going to get 0. You can't control it. Whereas Facebook or ads or different things like that, you can control it. It's like a faucet. You can turn it up, you can turn it down. If you need more enrollments, you turn that faucet up a little bit. If you're getting closer to full, you can kind of scale it back. So a lot of different options, there. So what I'd love to do is kind of end with maybe either your favorite book, your favorite quote, or one nugget that you want to share. Anything at all would be great. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, but either a book, a quote, or just something that you would tell other directors of a center of how to continue to grow and keep rocking.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is in the last year, before any of this happened, our head of school, he looked at me one day because he was shaking things up a bit, pre-COVID, He was challenging some growth, some changes. And he looks at me one day, because I've been doing this a long time, and we get into our rut, if you will. It might be a good rut, but we like to do the way we've been doing it because it works. And changing that sometimes is hard. And he looked at me one day and he said, "Put on your flexible pants today because we're going for a run." And I went, "Oh no, what now?" But it was true. There are days, a lot of days, especially every day since COVID, we better be wearing our flexible pants, because that's all we've been doing for 5 months is rolling with the punches, and we have to be flexible. The old way of doing it may never return. And again, I agree with you. I don't like new normal, but it might be. And just knowing that that's okay. It's okay to change. It's okay to grow. It's not always comfortable in the moment. Growth usually is painful, but it can bring about some really good things. And so just trying to remain as flexible as possible. So go put on your flexible pants.
I like it. You've got you're extremely well spoken. So I'm this has been a fun conversation. So if people want to learn more about your center, where can they go?
We have our website is gracebrethren.schools.com, or we also have a Facebook page, Grace Brethren Preschool. Or if they want to message me directly and chat about anything, and happy to help.
So Julia, thank you.
It's a team sport around here.
This has been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So I'm going to let you scoot if you want to stick around for just one more minute. But we will end the broadcast. I will be back here next week, Thursday. We're trying to solidify a time. I keep changing the time to see what fits best for everyone. I've done 10 a.m., 11. I've done 7 p.m., 2. It's like, but I think every day is just different, and it's kind of more in the moment, which is all good. But it was such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
And hopefully everyone got some really great nuggets. So my 2 favorite quotes from you today: there's no box, everything's outside the box. But I loved "put your flexible pants on" today. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening, and everyone that watches the replay. Have a great rest of your Thursday, great rest of your week, good weekend, and we will catch you back here Thursday. See you guys.